We are very excited about this talk, so I want to make sure that I give enough time to do it justice. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Brown Lounge. It's so exciting to have you. And thank you to everybody online who is also watching. We have almost 50 people online, Enola, watching you speak. That's fantastic. No pressure. This is part of our Brown School Centennial Lecture Series, and we are just so appreciative of all of you who are showing up to celebrate 100 years of the Brown School, which has just been a year-long commemoration of the amazing progress that has come from the Brown School. We have been celebrating this with a number of events, including this Centennial Lecture Series. And so I want to give a special thanks to the faculty subcommittee led by Tanya Edmond and Shenyang Guo for helping to create this series, highlighting the key areas of the school. The Brown School, as all of you know and have contributed to, has consistently been a leader in research and teaching, both locally, nationally, and internationally over the last 100 years. If you had told me when I was sitting in my very first research methods class with a book in front of me entitled Developing Practice Guidelines for Social Work Intervention, Issues, Methods, and Research Agendas, I would be introducing the author of that book at a later point in my career, I would have said, I think you need a mental status exam. And does that mean I will finally understand the difference between mediation and moderation? And so I'm thrilled to be here today because it really feels like it's a pinnacle of a career climb to be able to introduce everybody to Enola Proctor for our talk today, Research at Brown, A Century of Leading at the Edge. As you all know, she really needs no introduction, but I'm going to take the opportunity to brag because she's one of the leaders in her field and has made invaluable contributions to the field of social work. Her research is motivated by a desire to answer the question, how do we ensure that people receive the very best possible care? Through her research, she has contributed to the intellectual capital for the rapidly growing field of dissemination and implementation science, leading teams to distinguish, clearly define, and develop taxonomies and stimulate more systematic work to advance the conceptual, linguistic, and methodological clarity in the field. Dr. Proctor's research has been funded by a number of federal agencies for 26 consecutive years. And she directs the Implementation Research Institute, a training program in implementation science funded by the National Institutes for Mental Health. She led the establishment of several university-wide centers and cores in implementation science, including the Center for Dissemination and Implementation in the Institute for Public Health, and the Dissemination and Implementation Research Core at WashU's CTSA. Dr. Proctor's awards, I know, I'm going to talk through half your talk, but it's your own fault for having a tremendous CV. Dr. Proctor's awards include the WashU's Arthur Compton Holly Distinguished Faculty Award, Society for Social Work and Research Distinguished Research Award, and the American Public Health Association's Stephen M. Banks Award for Outstanding Mentoring in Mental Health Services. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Proctor here today to share Research at Brown, A Century of Leading at the Edge.
Thank you so much, Dorian. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and for people online, especially Tanya, who persuaded me on behalf of the Centennial Planning Committee to take on this task. I balked a little bit, but I'm so glad that I took the plunge. It is a daunting topic because 100 years involves a lot of ground to cover, and the sheer number of leaders in our school, past and present, made this a pretty challenging endeavor. And I need to ask at the outset forgiveness for many omissions that I'm sure that I have made, but I'm going to provide a manuscript to the archives, the Centennial Archives, so I welcome before too long corrections and additions, and I'll be sure to get those added. Well, this topic is really meaningful to me because, like many of you, research at Brown is why I came to this school 50 years ago in 1974. As some of you already know, I graduated college with a BA in sociology, but I knew I didn't want to pursue a PhD in sociology because I never wanted to be a researcher. So I got an MSW and working as a social worker in Dallas, Texas, with impoverished families and children, their emotional and behavioral problems just seemed intractable. But I was fortunate to have a remarkable agency leader, Jim Burnham. And he emphasized that in working with these clients, we were working at the edge of what was known. So he encouraged us to find our clients in the literature, asking us to spend 10% of our supposedly 40 hours of the work week searching for research that would guide our practice. Well, this was an exciting challenge, but very frustrating because the literature offered so little. So I began to see research in a new light. I began to see its potential to guide social work practice. So from the edge of not knowing how to serve clients, I came to Washington University to pursue a PhD and began just a wonderful career trying to expand the edges of social work knowledge. So today I'm going to highlight 5 areas that I think exemplify where our school over its past 100 years has been leading at the edge. A commitment to science, the knowledge base and what we know, the adequacy of our research methods, research infrastructure for the field, and building research capacity here at home. And for each of these areas, I'm going to lift up some historical achievements and highlight some remarkable leaders of our school who charted our path at these critical junctures. Our school has long valued science. Classic empiricism embedded in the scientific methods served as the epistemological foundation for the developing field of social work from the get-go. Early pioneers, Jane Addams and Mary Richmond, used data to understand social issues, to develop programs, and to advocate for policies. In 1927, our very first dean, Frank J. Bruno, included research in the inaugural curriculum. He was a champion of transdisciplinary work, and he emphasized the importance of the school having a strong grounding in statistics and evidence. Many other deans followed suit, notably Benjamin Youngdahl, Ralph Garber, and acting dean Ronald Feldman. Then in 1974, new dean Shanti Kanduka began to build a culture here that valued systematic inquiry. Throughout his 30-year tenure as dean, Shanti staunchly characterized research-generated knowledge as the foundation for our profession. He said, "We are not interested in rhetoric or the fad of the day or traditional answers. Rather, we're interested in data, evidence, and the soundness of policies." A Brown School faculty member from 1974 to 1978, Martin Bloom, wrote one of the first books on the philosophy of scientific practice for social work. Now, what is the source of our commitment as social workers to science? First, throughout history, key leaders have underscored that knowledge is the basis, the source of legitimacy for all professions. In 1969, Aaron Rosen stated, "The appropriate discharge of professional responsibility requires that a major focus of activities in schools of social work should be the initiation of research into the means of professional practice." And in his 2007 graduation speech to the school, Dean Eddie Lawler reminded students and faculty of the school's commitment to creating and pursuing a knowledge base for the profession, noting that the defining characteristic of a profession is its hegemony over knowledge. Professions that have status and identity produce and control a knowledge base. This evidence base in social work is so critical because without it, we do not have a basis for a true profession. Our commitment to science is also rooted in our professional ethics. Ethical Principle 5 in the NASW Code of Ethics requires that we contribute to a knowledge base for social work and promote and facilitate evaluation and research. So the Brown School has long trusted in science, and our history demonstrates our institutional commitment to science. From the profession's earliest days, our pioneers worked at the edges of available knowledge. Before the founding and naming of the George Warren Brown School of Social Work, faculty and students in our predecessor program, the School of Social Economy, worked to understand the nature of social problems. In 1910, School of Social Economy student Ina T. Tyler studied the lives of St. Louis's newsboys. These were children as young as 9, more than half of them immigrants. She found that they worked from early morning into the night, sleeping near hot air drafts, alleys, wagon yards, or any available shelter. And she posed the question, shall the influence of an unregulated street trade be our gift of citizenship to posterity? What are the compensating gains of this terrible waste of youth? 1 year later, 2 women researchers with the school, Elizabeth Moore and Minnie D. Weiss, sought to understand why scores of babies were dying in St. Louis. The widespread assumption and myth was that Providence is taking our babies. However, these 2 women researchers with the School of Social Economy discovered the true cause. It was the filthy environment in which milk cows lived and were milked. So these are examples of our very earliest researchers chipping away at the edges of what was known and setting an expectation for our current faculty. However, our school's engagement in research ebbed and flowed. Often, research was sidelined, giving way to debates over ideology and theoretical orientation. And if you read our history book, considerable faculty drama. Dean Conduca noted that at times schools of social work have been delinquent in their task of building a usable knowledge base for interventions. But in the 1997 winter issue of the Washington University Magazine, Chancellor Emeritus Mark Wrighton described Conduca as shaping our school's ascent, creating a culture where impeccable scholarship and effective teaching are dearly valued. He went on to say, Conduca recruits and retains exceptionally talented faculty who share his belief that a solid knowledge base is necessary to address society's problems. Indeed, being a Brown School faculty member carried an expectation that one would make a mark by becoming a field-leading researcher. Our next dean, Eddie Lawler, challenged Brown School faculty to conduct research with impact for communities, social service agencies, individuals, and policies, domestic and global. And Dean Dorian Traub regularly highlights the impactful evidence-based research being led now by our Brown School faculty. And our faculty welcome the challenge of moving the edges of what we know, and our research productivity is widely recognized. 12 of our faculty were named to the 2022 list of top 100 contributors to Social Work Journal Scholarship. 3 were named last month to the 2024 list of Clarivat highly cited researchers in the world, and 11 to the 2024 Stanford University Elsevier World's Top 2% of Scientists. And at last count, the Brown School Library documented 72 faculty authored books in areas of aging, child maltreatment, health, mental health, poverty, racism, and social policy. I couldn't fit all 72 into one slide. But at the Brown School, we lead at the edge of what is known. The third edge where we lead is advancing research methodology. Faculty at the Brown School have pioneered new research methods in 5 ways, and I'll give brief examples of each. Methods for design and analysis, measures to capture key social work concerns, data linkages, transdisciplinary team science, and methods for partner engagement and empowerment. Surveys and case studies were typical methods for social work research until the late 1960s, when increasingly their limits were recognized. Former Associate Dean David Cronin, who quipped that using the case study method drove him bananas, explained, social science knowledge did not begin to impact social work education until the mid-1960s. And from my perspective as a young student, the case study method lacked grounding in research. However, people with practical experience loved it because they could just rely on anecdotal evidence. But the 1970s brought a new emphasis on research rigor. Joel Fisher, a University of Hawaii social work professor and visiting scholar here at the Brown School in the early 1970s, wrote in the then premier journal Social Work the very first review of published casework evaluation studies. This review included one study conducted by Dean Traub's mentor, Columbia University Professor Ed Mullen, a study that Fisher praised for its use of a more satisfactory design. But Fisher's results from his review were disappointing, and he was scathing in its critique. He concluded that the available controlled research strongly suggests that lack of evidence of casework effectiveness is the rule rather than the exception. He subsequently published a very funny satirical article characterizing social work as a baseball game, with season records failing to show wins. That is, casework lacked evidence of effectiveness. He called that article, "Mighty Casework Strikes Out at the Bat." Well, his provocative articles sparked a realization that social work needed to get serious about effectiveness evaluation. So Martin Bloom, who was here, worked with Fisher, who was a visiting scholar, to pioneer the single case study method to evaluate clinical practice. Their book, Evaluating Practice, was widely adopted in the field and heralded as advancing the use of scientific methods for testing new interventions. Brown School faculty continue to advance the repertoire and rigor of research methods. At our library's last count, our faculty have published 20 books on research methodology, including system science, implementation science, policy analysis, and a host of statistical advances. In addition, Brown faculty have a long history of measurement development. In 1974, as a first-year doctoral student, I had the pleasure of learning from Walter Hudson, a University of Chicago-trained statistician and Brown School faculty member in the early and mid-70s. He was a rigorous, inspiring, and entertaining teacher. His statistical classes routinely drew over 80 students from across campus to our school each semester. His statistical expertise convinced him that good data depend on good measurement. And he would claim provocatively, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Now, I'm not so sure about that, but Walt was a measurement champion. He set out to develop a suite of measures for several commonly encountered social work practice issues, ushering in a strong tradition at Brown for advancing measurement. His book, Clinical Measurement Package, a Field Manual, provided 9 paper and pencil self-report questionnaires to measure such problems as depression, low self-esteem, anxiety, and marital discord. This book was characterized as setting a standard for social work research. And I bought the last available copy last week from Amazon. The Brown School's expertise in measurement was further advanced by our beloved professor, David Gillespie. His measurement course equipped our doctoral students with singular knowledge of the importance and intricacies of measurement. Our faculty continue to advance the field's ability to capture constructs central to social work. This slide reflects just some of the measures developed, tested, and published by former emerita, who's here, Arlene Stiffman, former faculty member Renee Cunningham-Williams, and current faculty Nancy Morrow Howe, Doug Luke, Vetta Sanders Thompson, Jeremy Goldbach, Hussein Latif, and myself. If others of you have developed measures that I'm not aware of, please let me know, and I'd love to include them in the archive. A third area of methodological innovation in our faculty is data linkage. Few users of social services receive all the help they need from one system of care. Moreover, one system's data rarely talks to another's. Accordingly, researchers face huge challenges linking data across systems to capture the full range of service use. This October's Institute of Public Health conference featured the challenges of data linkage, but Brown School researchers have been forging such linkages for decades. Through nearly 10 years of work supported through grants from the Department of Justice, the Department of Education, the National Institute of Mental Health, and the CDC, Melissa Johnson-Reed, Brett Drake, Trish Cole, and James Herbert Williams connected data from multiple systems that serve children in protective services. Theirs was one of the first of such innovations. We at Brown have also advanced team and transdisciplinary research. When I joined our school faculty in 1977, I observed that most faculty members worked as lone rangers. That is, individual faculty members gathered and analyzed their own data and published single author papers. In fact, tenure and promotion criteria in schools nationwide explicitly prioritized Lone Ranger authors. But I didn't, and I think few faculty possess the full range of skill required for rigorous research. Things began to change as Conduca recruited a multidisciplinary faculty. These included sociologist Mark Rank, who's here, economist and social worker Martha Ozawa, who ushered in groundbreaking work on social policy research on federal welfare expenditures, older adults, and Social Security. Sociologist David Gillespie, who advanced the field's understanding of organizational dynamics and disaster preparedness. Social psychologist Larry Davis, who brought a critical lens to race and racism, long preceding our current study of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and anthropologist, our dear friend, the late Carolyn Lesorigal, who pioneered research in global development, particularly rural Kenya. Eddie Lawler continued to expand the multidisciplinary range of the Brown School, hiring physician Ramesh Raghavan, engineer Peter Hovman, and more than a dozen public health faculty. Lawler believed that breakthroughs will happen by mixing faculty together from social work, public health, and other disciplines. The launch of our research faculty track further enriched our research methods repertoire. Our faculty soon represented 35 different disciplines doing remarkable work together. Indeed, Brown faculty wrote the book on transdisciplinary science. Finally, in the area of measurement and research methods, we've led by advancing community-partnered research. One of the school's earliest research partnerships was launched by the late Robert Pierce. Working with social worker Greg Eschel and 2 social work graduate students, Pierce wrote a 1974 grant that founded the Family Resource Center, a long-standing premier youth and family treatment agency. Then, in the early 1990s, Wendy Auslander and Curtis McMillan led a core within the Center for Mental Health Services Research that was dedicated to developing infrastructure to solidify research community partnerships. Those partnerships in that grant included the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, the Department of Mental Health, and the Division of Family Services. Curtis and Brett spent time embedded in DFS through an exchange program, and their agency leaders spent time here at Brown. Grant dollars flowed to our community partners, supporting their time building research capacity in their systems of care. These partnerships also led to implementation science advances for partnered and empowering research, such as centering interventions on feasibility and acceptability, measuring and responding to stakeholder priorities and preferences, measuring local context, adapting interventions, participatory and co-design approaches such as group model building and community cafes, and stepped wedge designs that ensure that all participants receive the most promising intervention during the course of the study. Partnered research was strengthened under the leadership of Eddie Lawler, who developed a model for Brown School community partnerships. Frameworks were developed to inventory the range of existing partnerships, formally establish varying levels of engagement, and conduct ongoing partnership evaluation. Partnerships were formalized through memoranda of understanding. Thus, on the method front, the Brown School has been leading from the edge, developing and using innovative designs, linking data, pioneering measures, and solidifying partnerships. Most schools of social work have had, and many still have, very limited infrastructure to support research. Just ask our PhD graduates who go to many schools across the country. This is probably due to the fact that for much of our professional history, social workers have been viewed as consumers and not producers of knowledge, and also due to the field's occupation with swings in favored theory. But I'll highlight several areas of infrastructure the Brown School pioneered to support our field at large. First, professional journals. Aaron Rosen wrote in 1969 that no social work professional body had allocated a journal to disseminating and encouraging empirical studies in social work. Characterizing the state of social work journals as unfortunate, he wrote, They place premium on publishing views, reviews, and theoretical treatises that can only be pushed so far for lack of a pool of accumulated facts before they become meaningless and unsubstantiated rhetoric. They reinforce authors who organize half-truths into semi-coherent wholes, which, garnished with the right moral vindictive, become a body of unverified statements and propositions that then become the staple menu of practitioners and teachers alike. Do you think he found the journals to be unfortunate? I do think so. So the Brown School stepped into leadership, launching 8 years later the Journal of Social Service Research. About that time, NASW began publishing the journal Social Work Research. Dean Konduka chaired the NASW Publications Committee, and he persuaded several Brown School faculty to serve in editorial board and review committee leadership roles. But during the 1990s, social work's research deficits became the focus of national concern. Citing a crisis in the current development of research resources in social work, a group of social work leaders formed a task force on social work research. Their report, issued in November 1991, stated, "The contributions of research to the knowledge base of social work practice lagged far behind the profession's growth. This has serious consequences for individuals using social services, for professional practitioners, and for the credibility of the profession and for the American society. Billions of dollars are being spent for services to deal with critical social problems, including services provided by social workers. But extremely little is being spent on research to improve the effectiveness of such services." In response, the NIMH established the Social Work Research Development Center Awards. And in 1993, we were awarded a $3.75 million 5-year grant to establish the Center for Mental Health Services Research, the nation's first research center funded by the NIMH in a school of social work. This ushered in an era for research centers at Brown. Several major research centers had national or international foci, and these were joined by scores of others, many of which Wendy Auslander led affiliated research projects. I think if we were to do a social network analysis, we'd find her studies aligned with most of the centers. And we've established a number of research labs, and faculty at Brown have launched and led many university-wide research centers. In 2015, Brown established the Evaluation Center with a mission to partner with people and organizations in pursuit of equitable outcomes. Within 5 years, the center had over 55 community partners. 2 additional offices, the Office of Community Partnerships and the Office of Global Programs, provide infrastructure specific to our local agency partners and those across the globe. We're so grateful for Cynthia, Lindsay, and Tammy's leadership. Brown School faculty are working with communities and researchers in Latin America, the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. Beyond a journal and research centers, we've helped lead the development of professional networks to boost national research capacity. In the late 1970s, we co-hosted the very first meeting of the Group for the Advancement of Doctoral Education. And our faculty have provided leadership and scholarly guidance ever since. I remember that meeting because I remember walking down a hall, first floor Brown, seeing all these legends in the field, all in our building. In 1986, we supported the development of the National Deans and Directors group. In 1997, We hosted and led a workshop on developing research infrastructure for other social work programs in schools. Some of us were at the table to found the Society for Social Work and Research in 2000, and our faculty have since served as officers, board members, and chairs of its working committees. In January 2000, Dean Conduca co-hosted here at Brown with Ron Feldman of Columbia University a meeting to launch the St. Louis Group, motivated by a growing concern that a small number of social work educators were generating research. And the St. Louis Group developed coaching mechanisms to help other schools develop their research portfolios. And to support a book that Dorian referenced, we convened a meeting of national social work practice leaders to wrestle with the challenge of developing guidelines for social work practice. Oops, I moved too quickly. Unsuccessfully, I'm sorry to say. We tried to work with the National Association of Social Workers to build repositories of intervention effectiveness data and a platform for practitioners to access that information. NASW was not interested in an initiative being proposed by individual faculty. Sometimes when you're way out on an edge, you fall off. But more successfully, Brown School faculty have been key players in the grand challenges, leading initiatives, and authoring key papers. And many Brown faculty have been awarded membership in the American Academy of Social Work and Social Welfare, and Vice Chancellor Mary McKay is currently past president of that group. In the year 2001, just 1 year after SWR's founding, the Brown School established the Aaron Rosen Lecture to provide a platform to showcase social work research at its best. The selected speaker is one who has accumulated a body of significant and innovative scholarship relevant to practice, the research base for practice, or effective utilization of research in practice. And we are so thrilled that Leo Cabasa received this honor and will deliver the 2025 Rosen Lecture in Seattle in January. So we have a strong, long history of building research infrastructure for our field. Another edge in social work's capacity building is research training. In 1952, Brown School Dean Youngdahl recruited Dr. William Gordon to establish a DSW program, one of the first programs in social work. According to social work historian and late faculty member Ralph Pumphrey, until this time, Washington University administration was reluctant to offer a doctoral program in social work because it did not believe that social work practice lent itself to the kind of scientific analysis that characterized doctoral programs in academia. Moreover, there wasn't much precedent for social work doctoral education in other schools around the country. But Gordon, trained as an ecologist, had a dream of a science of social work. He viewed our doctoral program to be firmly rooted in both social work and science. A decade later, Professor Aaron Rosen was charged with making a significant change to our doctoral education. In his proposal for the PhD program in social work, Rosen wrote, "The complexity of social problems in modern times underscores the need for intensified research efforts to discover solutions. This situation is further aggravated by an acute shortage of well-trained faculty and scholars. It is this that the doctoral program in social work at Washington University attempts to redress." So Rosen led the transformation of the DSW program to a research-focused interdisciplinary PhD with a curriculum that stands today. His grants from NIMH and the Veterans Administration supported this program, and provided focused training in some specialized areas. After a hiatus, we again began to receive NIMH support for our doctoral program in 1995, which also provided postdoctoral training, a first at the school. That program is now in its 30th year and hopefully about to receive support for years 30 through 35 under the leadership of Leo Cabasa and Byron Powell. In 2002, we received funding from the National Institute on Drug Abuse for social work pre- and postdoctoral training led by Arlene Stiffman. That program is now in its 26th year, led by Jeremy Goldbach and Kathleen Buchholz. And of course, now we also offer a PhD in public health. Dean Konduka often described our doctoral program as the school's shining jewel. Our research capacity building extends far beyond our school because each year early stage researchers from across the nation and the globe come to us for specialized training in mental health, implementation science, chronic HIV, and infectious disease implementation science, systems science, and global health. To date, these programs have trained over 600 national and global scholars. So let's talk about additional areas in research infrastructure, specifically supports to our faculty. The establishment of a research office and the role of Associate Dean for Research is an example of how we tried to increase faculty capacity to conduct research. Throughout the 80s, as a few of you will recall, individual faculty were responsible for writing, even typing, and even shipping their grant applications. After I prepared my first grant application, I asked the Secretarial Center to determine the necessary universal approvals and mail it by the deadline. 8 months later, having heard nothing from the funder, I asked the center supervisor if the school had received any news, because I hadn't. She sheepishly opened her desk drawer to show me that it was still there, confessing, I never got around to mailing it. Well, things improved in the Secretarial Center, but faculty still had to do a lot of work in preparing their grant proposals. And after submitting my first center grant application, many hundred pages long, I walked into Dean Konduka's office and said, never again. I will not submit another grant without support for its preparation and submission. Well, be careful of what you ask, because that's how I got the task of serving as the first Associate Dean for Research. Today, we enjoy the leadership. Oh, this is my slide on all of our external training, sorry. Today, we enjoy the leadership of our 5th Associate Dean for Research and an Office of Research, Development, and Support. Grant funds have always been important to the school. Ralph Garber's federal grants, including a child welfare grant, provided nearly half the school's income in the 1960s, and our grant support has steadily increased. A visiting senior scholar program boosted faculty grant writing capacity in the 90s, as did internal funding for pilot grants through a program Arlene Stiffman established upon her retirement in 2009. Eddie Lawler established an annual review process for tenure-track faculty with a formal third-year review as the apex. These processes helped early career faculty formulate statements of their research agendas and brought helpful, if nerve-wracking, critiques and suggestions for strengthening their paths to impact. Throughout its 100-year history, the Brown School has been a research pioneer. Research has been valued as the foundation of the practice we teach, the contributions we make to society, and the information we share. Well, this year, we're not only looking back with pride, we're also taking stock. Over the past 6 months, I've had the privilege of meeting with a small group of faculty to discuss the state of social work research. Thank you, Shanti Kanduka, Eddie Lawler, Aaron Rosen, Mark Rank, Leo Cabasa, Daryl Hudson, Brett Drake, Melissa Johnson-Reed, Tanya Edmond, and Barry Rosenberg for those incredible conversations. And we have agreed that this is a critical time that the Brown School remains at the edges of many issues. These include a commitment to science, both within and beyond our profession. Open contempt of science has become a new normal in our national society, according to Peter Hotez, founding dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. And according to a recent editorial in Science, researchers working in politically charged fields such as public health, climate, and sexual and reproductive rights are especially prone to threats to their physical and intellectual safety. New and perhaps more intensive threats on research addressing diversity, equity, and marginalized groups are looming very clearly. What can we learn from our past? Well, the Brown School has been here before. Wendy Auslander holds the distinction of having her research scrutinized by state and federal governments. During the AIDS epidemic, her project on pregnancy prevention with at-risk youth was placed on a federal list of suspicious research because it involved training in condom use. The indefatigable Wendy navigated political scrutiny of research through creative workarounds, and you should ask to hear her story. A commitment to scientific knowledge also seems threatened within social work. A critical look at the program from the 2024 Society for Social Work and Research shows that sessions espousing ideology outnumbered those reporting research on how to address core social work problems. Social work's grand challenge documents have been criticized for their reliance on consensus statements rather than empirically gathered data. Many early career researchers are reluctant to pursue federal grants to support their work, and this self-selected withdrawal limits social work's voice in shaping national research agendas. Our journals display our field's heated debates about colonialism, abolition, power, and oppression. Clearly, the complexity of social work's foci demands innovation in theory, and research should always be guided by, and in turn, inform theory. However, as Professor Bloom wrote in 1975, a person with a problem never runs to a theorist for help. Brett Drake and David Hodges' recent paper cautions that the increasing postmodern critical theory colonization of academia may functionally terminate the ability of quantitative researchers to explore new options to ameliorate human suffering. I fear that those who disparage research as being oppressive often fail to leverage the growing repertoire of qualitative preference assessment, engagement, and power-sharing methods. Because professional knowledge is the foundation for our societal auspices, discounting, neglecting research in any profession is a grave mistake. So at these critical edges to our centennial year, what do we do? First, we can reaffirm our commitment to science. During a recent conversation with this group of Brown School faculty members, Dean Kanduka insisted that we should never waver in our commitment to empirical scientific methods. For 30+ years, he has said, social work science is not inconsistent with the pursuit of social justice. Indeed, that's how we may increase social justice. Second, we will continue to build the knowledge base. We will develop, test, and implement evidence-based programs, interventions, services, and policies that address core social work concerns: poverty, the needs of older adults, income inequality, oppression and injustice, child maltreatment, mental illness, and substance abuse. In Dean Kanduka's words, GWB's faculty are very receptive to new ideas, and they fashion innovative solutions. We will continue to do so. Third, we will continue to pioneer and use research tools that include, respect, and empower our communities. We will continue to uphold the high standards of the Rosen Lecture, which Professor Ronald Feldman characterizes as one of the few forms of institutional recognition for quality research in social work. And we will continue to build research capacity within our halls and for the field at large. Benjamin E. Youngdahl was dean from 1945 to 1962, and this included a period at the height of McCarthyism when social work was under fire. However, he stated, "Our philosophy and approach in social work is essentially an optimistic one. We think that it is worth doing something about given situations. We believe that progress can be made toward our goals by the intelligent application of knowledge. We are a dynamic profession, refusing to accept the cynicism and pessimism of some of our contemporaries. In short, we will continue to lead from the edge and new edges that will appear in our future." I have found our group's recent Zoom meetings with former Dean Shanti Kanduka remarkable. The late Chancellor Emeritus William Danforth described Kanduka as a meliorist, one who believes that the world can be improved by finding out what is wrong with it and then taking steps to put it right. A meliorist is one who makes the world a better place. Dean Kanduka recently expressed the hope that this centennial will provide occasion for the Brown School to chart the history of the future of social work. Let's ensure that the history of the Brown School's future shows that we helped make the world a more just place. Our legacy, our commitment, and our skills equip us well for that work. And where better than here to lead our field's commitment to science, its knowledge building, its methodological development, and its capacity building. If you have historical documents or memories to share, please contact our comms team so that they can add it to our record. And I want to acknowledge and thank the many people who've taken time over the past several months to provide data, share memories, and think with me about the history of research at Brown. These include Aaron Rosen, Tammy Fernandez, Eddie Lawler, Lori Siegel and other librarians, Jackie Pullen, Liz Valley Hall, and many current and former colleagues. Thank you so much. We went a little long.
It was tremendous. We actually have a few minutes for questions if anybody would like to ask Dr. Proctor anything about all of her historical research here.
Good.
You've left them speechless. Oh, okay. Let me bring you the microphone, Barry, so our friends on Zoom can hear.
It's not really a question on research, but you made an allusion to periods where the profession really did sort of pull away from commitment to science. And it would be wonderful to hear more about that. But how do those, if you recall or understand them, do those moments coincide with what you just laid out in terms of the current moment, in terms of a commitment to science and research? And whatever you could share on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I really wish I could know more about the details of that. I'm particularly interested in the school's experience during the McCarthy era. Our history book references that the dean found that social work was under attack That's an area I'd like to delve more in because I think we are once again in a position. I mean, the threats are pretty explicit that, and my conversations with NIH leaders suggest that we're going to have to do our work, but we're not going to be able to call our work what we really want to call it. That terminology is going to become suspect. We know that all federally funded work is listed in what's called the NIH Reporter and is searchable for titles and abstracts by keywords. And we know that many keywords are going to get flagged, and we probably will see repeats of what Wendy experienced. So, you know, I was really moved to review last week I called Wendy and said, I have this vague memory that you were under watch. Let's talk about this. And it was quite remarkable. And, you know, she found personal and structural workarounds with that. I think, you know, again, I'm not a social work historian. I've had the benefit of having in my office lots of books and documents, and that's been my source for much of what I shared with you. But I'm really intrigued with, I think it also had to do with the debate that our profession was a craft. And when I joined the faculty, there was a group of faculty who really held to the view that social work was an art. I wrote a paper about operationalizing and measuring constructs related to the helping relationship, and Social Work published an article where I was personally attacked as a woman speaking in a male voice who sold out against feminism because I took NIH dollars. And, you know, there were times when taking NIH dollars in the field at large and even at the school made you public enemy number one. You were characterized as chasing money. I saw it much differently. I saw securing and leveraging money to do the work that we care about. So I think, you know, the theoretical consternations that we've worked ourselves into over time. When I started as a social worker, I read theories of helping. And I remember going to my practicum instructor and saying, tell me what to do. And he said, you ask too many questions for a woman. Just read the book and figure it out, you know. So theory was kind of, you know, the be all and end all. The interpersonal and work with communities was viewed as not amenable to operationalization and measurement. We've been under attack. So I think, you know, those are factors through our history that I only have my experience and what I've read, but you ask a really fascinating question, Barry, and it's one that, you know, I'd love to learn more about. Yes.
Thank you very much, Enola, for your wonderful talk. I just have a comment. You mentioned Walter Hardison's work, the measurement, and also you listed many scales, instruments developed by our colleagues, which is wonderful. Sadly, that tradition of keeping the good measurement, psychometric validity and reliability has been challenged.
Yeah.
Today, you know, when people do the AI, machine learning, they don't care about the reliability, you know, validity of the measures. So that's very sad. You know, I just want to make this comment, and if possible, I would like to hear your comment about that.
You know, well, I've seen too, not only a decline in psychometric research, but also a lot of homegrown measures. And implementation science has been very vulnerable to that, as has community engaged work. I remember Claudia Colton gave the Rosen lecture at one time about community practice. And she said, you know, we really don't have a strong research base and we aren't tackling and measuring a lot of key issues. And she used the Rosen lecture to call for more empirical work into community practice, which she characterized as really, you know, lacking measurement and evidence. I think in part, you know, I don't know, you know, how many schools teach their doctoral students rigorous psychometric and measurement principles. I also think that the richness of social work, and, you know, it keeps echoing in my ears, Erin's statement about the increasing complexity of the problems that social work deals with. Those are tough to measure. And as we start tackling some of those issues, we don't have existing measures, and so people are making them up. So hopefully you can be the voice in the wilderness and call us to task and help increase our commitment to and our skill in making sure that our measures are good.
Thank you so much for this fantastic review of the last 100 years. The celebrations will continue through the spring and culminate in a weekend of celebrating in the spring. We're calling it the Brown School Eras Tour. And so please join us for all of it. And I hope you all have a good winter break.